check if it is better now.
Yes, better now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll introduce myself. I'm having 20 plus years of experience. I started my career as a VB 5.2 developer, moved on to VB6, and then started working on .NET Framework since its first beta that was released by Microsoft way back in year 2000, 2001, and have worked on all the major releases of .NET Framework till date, including the .NET Core platform as well. As of now, I am working more on the cloud technologies from Microsoft, that is Microsoft Azure, Microsoft IoT platform driven by Windows 10 IoT Core, and Azure IoT services. And along with that, I'm working on mobility solutions from Microsoft. So that's where I took Xamarin trainings to be delivered. And I believe I have started working with Xamarin some 7 years back. And since then have explored lot many things. In fact, that point in time, Xamarin was not part of Microsoft stack. It was a separate entity in itself. And later on, Microsoft acquired Xamarin to provide the integral solution based on the .NET framework along with the Visual Studio itself. So talking about this session, in this session, we are going to talk about what exactly XAML forms are, or Xamarin Forms basically represent, why the requirement for storing the data locally is there, what all storage options that we have if we are looking to store the data locally on the device, preferably the mobile device or tab you can think of. And then we'll talk about one of the option into that, that is SQLite. When the SQLite is used or preferred, we'll talk about it, and then we'll see the implementation with the same. And then another flavor of SQLite implementation we will go through, where we are going to implement our code in asynchronous manner to keep our UI highly responsive. The asynchronous behavior is something what we expect. So let's start. Let's talk a bit about Xamarin Platform. Xamarin Platform is a platform created by a former company named as Xamarin and acquired by Microsoft, where they allowed .NET developers to use their existing .NET skill set to be used for developing the native mobile applications for the popular platforms like Android and iOS. Prior to Xamarin, creating the native applications for these platforms was possible by using their own native technologies. Like for Android, the code used to be written in Java or C, C++, and then usually we work with Android Studio to compile the code, to package the code as an app and deploy that application either to the device or to the App Store, Play Store precisely. Similarly, for iOS, we had Objective-C or Swift, using which we used to create the iOS applications for iPhones and iPads. Now, if I am a .NET developer and looking to develop the application for Android platform or for iOS platform, definitely this is going to be a big learning curve for me, steep learning curve for me to understand the new ecosystem, the new language. I have to learn everything right from the scratch. And I may not be still able to give my 100% in terms of the implementation because the understanding of the new platform is going to be pretty new for me. So that is where Xamarin came up, took the Mono.NET framework, which was a parallel .NET framework for the open source world created by the open source community. And they utilize the entire .NET stack within Mono.NET to build the native mobile applications using the .NET platform. Then Microsoft realized that, okay, the world is moving towards the mobile computing, and they wanted the platform of their own to be created for working with the native mobile applications beyond Windows, and that's where they acquired Xamarin. Now, whatever the .NET implementation that you see on the Xamarin platform is actually based on .NET Core. It's no more mono .NET only. There are few features which are still mono .NET based, but precisely Microsoft is doing all the new development on .NET Core platform. So that's what Xamarin is doing. Now, what Xamarin offers is it allows us to create the applications which can be used for Windows-based apps. Precisely the type of applications we create there, we call them as UWP or Universal Windows Platform apps. Then we can create the iOS applications using Visual Studio and Xamarin. For building and deploying those applications, though, we would still require an Apple device, which can be an iPhone, which can be iPad, or which can be a Mac machine. But the development of the application doesn't require these machines. We can develop the applications without the Apple devices also right on a Windows machine. Then we can create the Android applications as well using Xamarin. These are all going to be completely native, 100% native mobile applications for their respective platforms. It's not just like that I have some kind of virtualization layer built on the native platforms represented by Android or iOS or Windows. It's a completely rewritten framework which already has got the interoperability, platform interoperability based implementation to work with the device APIs or the platform APIs, where the device or platform APIs might be written in C, C++, or Java, or Swift, or Objective-C, based on for which platform you are creating your application. So the Xamarin framework by default has got interoperability APIs for utilizing all those platform APIs. I'm sorry. So here we have the native SDKs to build the applications. Then Xamarin comes up with a completely cross-platform, cross-device framework or SDK as well, where you write your application code base only once. In one implementation, you put all of the required things into your application, and then the distributions of this particular framework based development automatically gets created for the three different platforms like iOS, Android, and UWP, based on whatever you have selected while creating the project. And this SDK or the platform is called as Xamarin Forms. Okay, so that's the base we are going to use in this session. Hence, I talked a bit about the Xamarin Forms. Now let's talk about the session itself. While building any kind of mobile application, it's a very common requirement where we might want some of the application data to be stored locally on the local device itself for performance reasons. For example, if I'm writing a social media app, my post usually would be stored at a remote server location, and using the RESTful endpoints or maybe the RESTful web APIs, I would be retrieving the data from the remote server. Now, if this keeps on happening, every time whenever the application is restarting, I mean, the request is going to the server every time when the application is restarting. This is going to be a performance overhead. Okay, because every time the server or the backend communication is required. And at the same time, it is going to increase the cost of your data usage as well. So in such cases, what we can do is precisely for this example, whatever the post that we have downloaded, the first time when the application was started, we can get a copy of all those posts stored on our local device. And next time onwards, whenever the application restarts, instead of downloading all the posts always from the server, I just do an incremental update. What that means is I will look for only the newer posts which I have not yet read or downloaded on my device. And once again, those new posts also I'll be adding to my local storage. So if there is no post available as a new post on the server side, precisely, I don't need to download anything from the server. Okay, so that's where the local storage is going to be important. As I said, downloading the post every time or the data every time from the server is going to be inefficient here, as multiple calls will be there, multiple times the request and response will be transferred, which contains the same information. So pretty inefficient in terms of performance, in terms of bandwidth usage. So in this case, as I said, the better approach is to download the post once and persist them on local device, maybe using a local database or file or something else, whatever the platform is making available. Okay. So practically what all options that we have provided on the device to store the data. Typically, we have three storage options to choose from for storing the data on the local device. The first one is preferences. The second one is file system. The third one is database. Preferences is more of a key value storage and can be useful when storing the configuration data for the application, like maybe the user preferences, some information about themes, colors that are going to be used for my application, and some other application specific settings. Then I have the file system support also. If I'm working with some loose data files like XML, JSON, binary, or text, maybe to store some information like log, I can think of using a file system. Typical hierarchical file system is available, just like any computer system, where I'll be using simple file IO APIs. The third option that we have here is database, which represent the relational storage for the database or the data. And that's simply defines when the database is going to be preferred. Whenever we have data that has got relations, or simply the relational data is there, or if we are looking for filtering of the data, at times, I would prefer to go with the database option, the relational option. Now, for relational storage of the data, most of the mobility platforms support a service called as SQLite, supported by UWP, supported by iOS, supported by Android. Same set of APIs we have, same set of services we have, and that makes it pretty consistent across the different platforms. And which is very important because I don't need to keep on changing my source code or the code base. The same code base, the same source code, I can reuse across different platforms and devices. And that's why the SQLite option has become an industry standard for storing the data in relational manner on the client side or on the device while working with mobile applications. So basically, how do we define SQLite? SQLite is a lightweight cross-platform local database that has become an industry standard for mobile applications. It doesn't run on a server. It is completely stored in a single file on your device's file system. Read and write operations are executed directly on that disk file itself. And here, being a SQL implementation, we once again have the support for the select, insert, update, delete, typical relational queries, which we use mostly while working with server-side databases. Now there is another service precisely created for Xamarin apps, whether you are using Xamarin Forms or Xamarin Android or Xamarin iOS, SQLite.NET is available for all, even for UWP as well. What this SQLite.NET is, it is basically one of the C# wrapper, I would say .NET wrapper, around the native SQLite engine provided by these different platforms that .NET developers can use. And basically, it represents an object relational mapper, pretty similar to entity framework that we are pretty used to while working with .NET. So what the object relational mapping does, it simplifies the process of defining the database schemas by allowing us to use the simple models written in the form of plain old CLR objects, POCO format entities that are defined into our own projects and which ultimately can be used to serve the schema. So let's go for a demo here where we will build a complete end-to-end solution that is going to make use of some local database. For that, I'll switch to Visual Studio 2019. What all you need while installing Visual Studio 2017 or 2019, anyone can be used, is that in the installer, you have to make sure that the workload for mobile development is added in its entirety. And let's see where that is done. I'll go to programs and features. From here, I have Visual Studio Enterprise 2019. I just click on change. This launches the Visual Studio installer. These are the workloads available, some of which I have installed, some of which are not installed. So under desktop and mobile, you can see I have included mobile development with .NET. And all the features inside this are actually installed, all the dependencies. So once this is completed, if it is not installed, you have to check that box. You have to get it installed. Once the installer finishes its job, you can launch Visual Studio and you can straight away go to create a new project. Wherein using these application template filters, in the first filter box, I select the language as C#, as I want my code to be written in C#. Platforms, I keep all platforms, as I'm looking for a cross-platform implementation. And then here in the last filter box, I select mobile, as I'm looking for a mobile application to be developed. Here I select mobile app Xamarin Forms. You can see Android app for Xamarin, iOS app for Xamarin as well. These are the native applications that are going to be created precisely, in fact, specifically for that platform. With mobile app Xamarin.forms, I actually create the cross-platform implementation, where there is one code base using which I develop the application, and the same application then can be deployed to UWP, Android, or iOS. So I go with this, select next. I'll name this as Xam underscore demo. My location I'll set as D drive demos, create. Here I'll select blank template as I want to build everything from scratch. And you can see what kind of applications I plan to develop for. Is it only Android, only iOS, only Windows, or any combination of them? So by default, it is coming up with Android and iOS checked. I will proceed with the default selection so that my application will be built for Android and iOS at the same time. Let's say create. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please post into the chat box. Okay, it's created. Here I go to the solution explorer, and what I see is there are 3 projects which are created. One is Xam demo SQLite. That's the same name that we have given. Then we have the same project name dot Android, and followed by the same project name dot iOS. So basically, these are just the shells for Android application into this demo SQLite and integrated by default or injected by default into the Android or iOS templates. You can see Android application has got a file called as mainActivity.cs, where it contains some startup code, wherein we have a reference for the Xamarin Forms project. So whatever we built in Xamarin Forms, automatically it will be integrated here. Same way, if I go to the iOS project, I have some startup stuff over here as well with the help of these 2 files. App delegate that integrates with Xamarin Forms and the entry point of this application in the form of the main method, which behind scenes is using app delegate. Okay, so I just close these 2 files. I collapse these 2 applications. My work will entirely be in this demo SQLite. Now, here I have got 2 XAML files, app XAML and main page XAML. App XAML basically represents your main application and the entry point. So here I can see the application class declaratively being put with the help of Xamarin, and it has got a code behind associated with it, app.xaml.cs, wherein I can see the other partial implementation of the same class. What it has got is the constructor that calls initialize component, which in turn integrates with whatever is defined in the XAML declarative form, creates the instance of main page class, and then has got some events that are going to be raised and handled at the application level. Then I have got the main page, some XAML code already there, some design already there. So some sample stuff they have already put. And here also we have got the code behind, which integrates with the XAML class, has got a constructor that makes a call to initialize component. And ultimately this integrates with whatever we have defined here. Okay, so before we proceed and put our own implementation, I want to test this template whether the application has been created successfully or not. Now here on the top you can see I've got some selection for what type of compilation I'm looking for. Any CPU that would be required for Android applications. Then you have iPhone or iPhone simulator options. iPhone will require a physical iPhone device to be connected to my machine using USB connections. iPhone simulator will require the iPhone simulator to be running on a Mac machine and where the Mac machine is remotely connected to my development machine. So right now that's not the case. I don't have the Mac connected, so I'll go with any CPU. I'll be trying out the application with Android application. Here goes the application type. So basically these are the executables, Android or iOS. If I'm looking to test iOS application, I'll select iOS, which will require Mac machine or a physical iPad or iPhone. So for now, I'll select Android, and then here I've got some option to select which device I want to connect to. So for that, here in the toolbar, we have something called as Android Device Manager tool. When I open this, it allows me to see the list of all the emulators for different Android devices. You can see I've already got one emulator created for Google Pixel 2 based on Android 9.0 API 28. If I'm looking for a different device-based emulator to be created, I just click on New. And here I can select the type of device I'm looking for. I can have Google Pixel 3. I can have Android Wear, square or round. I can have the device for Android TV. I can have some custom phones, generic ones, based on the different display sizes. And then I can select the processor architecture and the operating system that I'm looking for. Okay. And then I say create. So the list will appear here. And then I just start the simulator here. Select OK here. Soon we will see device starting message here on the screen. Meanwhile, I can close this Android device manager. See here it comes, phone is starting message. Just like if I'm working with a physical device, it boots up. Ready. Now I can say Control F5 to compile, package my application and deploy my application onto the emulator. First time it's going to take a little longer, as lots of dependencies it needs to download from internet and deploy the same into this target device. which may include the dependencies like the target runtime and all, along with some library functions. We can see the progress here. Here in the text format, it shows along with some animation going in here. If I click on that icon, it shows me the actual progress. I can also keep output window open to see what all things are going on. A trace of that. Still going on. I can see a download animation here, which means there are some dependencies being downloaded, packaged, and deployed to this phone emulator. Same is the case even if you are connecting the physical device to your development machine. And especially if the emulator is fresh or the physical device also is very fresh, no deployment has been done earlier, it's bound to take some time. It looks to be almost done as the progress bar is 100% now. Packaging and deploying the dependencies has been done. It's the application package now which is getting deployed to this device. We can see that over here. And there goes the application launch. So we should see some sample content shortly, which is actually represented by this XAML. And here it comes. Okay. Now what I'm looking for is, first of all, is labels to be removed from here. I want to change the title as well to SQLite demo. Font size I want to reduce to 24. Background color I want to change to dark gray. Made some changes, so I need to compile again. So I would say Control F5. Keep a watch. This time it's not going to take as long as it took for the first time. See, the deployment is done pretty quickly with all the updates. Only this incremental change has been taken into account and the application gets launched. See how quick it is. Okay. So now let's focus on the real stuff that we are looking for. We are going to have some local database created on this device with which we will be doing some read-write operations. Okay. So for that, I go to Solution Explorer, and as I said, SQLite is implemented using SQLite.NET in Xamarin applications, and where SQLite.NET is representing an ORM solution similar to Entity Framework. So, like Entity Framework, I would need a model class to be created. For that reason, in this demo SQLite project, I right-click, select Add, and select New Folder, and I name this folder as Models. In this Models folder, I need the model class to be added. Let's say add new item, class named as person. For the demo, I'm using a class named as person. Let's make this class public. We need to add a NuGet package over here to represent SQLite.NET. For that, I'll go to Solution Explorer, right-click on Dependencies, and select Manage NuGet Packages. Select Browse, and then search for SQLite. Multiple packages exist over here for SQLite. The one which I am going to use here is represented as SQLite Net PCL. That's the most popular and highly used package these days. Here it is. Let's install. In fact, not this one. I'll just cancel. It is this one. That is by System Clock Frank Krueger. I select this. Okay, this looks to be deprecated one. Let me see if we have some updated package for this. Just give me a moment. Yeah, so this is the correct one, the updated one, the one that we are selecting earlier. I'll just select this and say install. And select OK. And close this page. In dependencies, packages, we can see it's already added. Okay, let's import a namespace over here named as SQLite, which comes from that same package. And here I put an attribute named as table, which is coming from that SQLite namespace. Here you can notice that it is pretty similar to Entity Framework stuff. For the name parameter of this table attribute, I get the value as people. So this is the object relational mapping. I have a class person which will be mapped to a table called as people in the database. Let's create some properties. Couple of properties I'll create to keep the thing simple. First property is int id. Second property is name of type string. Then metadata attributes. I want this ID to be behaving like a primary key. I put primary key. I want another attribute here. I can put that by using comma, or I can put it separately as well. I want this to be identity column like what we have in SQL Server. SQLite doesn't have identity. We call it as auto increment. So I put the attribute as auto increment. I want to be not more than 50 characters in length. I say max length 50. And save this. The second thing that I would require is some kind of database operations which will provide the CRUD implementation to me. For that, I'll create another folder in my project named as repositories, wherein I'm going to add a class named as person repository that will provide all CRUD operations. So I right click repositories, select add, and select class. Name this as person repository. Import couple of namespaces here. One is the models namespace that we have created. So it is Xam demo SQLite dot models, and then the SQLite namespace itself. Make this class public. Like entity framework, we don't have any ready to use implementation here. We have to write our DAL stuff explicitly here. Here I define a private member of this class of type SQLite connection. Let's name it this as con. I define a property over here with auto implemented property syntax, which is of type string and named as status message, which I'll be using for displaying the status of the transactions. Then I have a constructor for this class, which is going to have in one parameter of type string named as db path. Here in the constructor, I initialize my connection object. So I say con equals to new SQLite connection. Asking for connection string. I'll pass db path here. And then I say con dot create table type person. It will automatically create a table using the schema of the class person. Okay. Then one by one for different operations, I'm going to place in my methods. Let's start with add operation. Let's say I have public void add new person. Takes in a parameter string name I have an integer variable here named as result to capture the status of the transaction. Then I have try catch. Catch will catch any exception coming in and sets the status message data member to formatted string that I put here. So let's say it's result, whatever is captured in this int. So record, it could be one or more. So I say S in parenthesis added. Sorry. This is a failure thing. So I'll just modify this. Failed to add. Within curly brace, I say name. Error. ex.message. And then in try, I have an if statement for a basic validation check, which just goes and checks string dot is null or empty name. Throws an exception. Name is required is the message. If it is not empty, I proceed with the transaction and I capture the transaction result in result. So here I say con dot insert. I don't need to write the query. Directly a method is there. What this insert is asking for? An object. So here I say the object is a new instance of person where the name property is set to the incoming parameter name. There then I set the status message. To a formatted string. Result. Record. Added. With name as so that's so simple. Next, I'm looking to retrieve the list of all the persons. So here I have another method. It returns me a list of person type. Name of the method I'll put as get all. Here also I go with try. Catches the exception. Sets the status message for failure. I just copy and paste that earlier one with some changes. Here I'll say fail to retrieve data with error being displayed as exception.message. And the actual code is here. Return con.table, which is like select asterisk of type person. What this returns me is table query object, which I want to convert to list of person. So I say dot to list. And here I say return to list. In case if there is some exception, the exception message will be set to the status message, and the empty list of person will also be returned. So that's our payload. As of now, to keep the thing simple, I'm not writing the code for edit and delete operations, but likewise, you can go for it. Like insert, we have update and delete methods as well. So you can try that out. Let's build the code, whatever we have created till now. Now, one requirement is somewhere we need to pass this DB path. For that, I'll be creating a helper class in my project. So I once again, okay, I need to wait for the build operation to complete. So what I will be doing precisely here is add another folder named as helpers, usual practice. In that, I'll be adding a class named as file access helper. So basically, your database file is created on the device in a protected area, something called as private area for that application. And that path I need to dynamically take. So that's where this helper file is going to be used. So here I go and right click the project, select add, select new folder, name the folder as helpers. In this helper folder now, I again right click add class by the name file access helper. We'll need one namespace to be imported here. Xamarin.essentials. This package is by default available as we have created the Xamarin Forms app. Then I make this class public. As it's a helper class, I can define it as static as well, which ensures all the members of this class are supposed to be defined as static. Then goes the helper method, which is also supposed to be static now. That returns a string, and the name is get local file path, takes in a parameter string file name. And here I say return. I have to import one more namespace as the file I'm going to load, file IO APIs are supposed to be available. So here I say using system.io, which is a standard .NET namespace. Here I say use the path API dot combine method, and the parameter is file system, the local file system, whichever it is, whether it is Android or iPhone, dot app data directory, wherever the directory is created for app data, which is private to the application. Only your application can use it. The other applications will not have access to this directory. And then the name of the file. Okay. Let's save. Then let's go to app.xaml.cs. Wherein a couple of namespaces I would need. The first is Xam demo SQLite.models. The second is helpers. So that is again Xam demo SQLite.helpers. Third one is system.component model. And finally, I need system.collections.generic. Okay. So here we have the class app. In fact, here we will need only the helper one. Models I don't need. Component model I don't need. This generic also I don't need. I just remove that. Helpers only is the one that I need here. Some changes required. In this class, I'll define a data member. Private string db path. I'll use lambda expression to define the value for it. And here we go. File access helper, the helper class that we have created. Dot get local file path that we have there. And the name of the file that I'm looking to work with. So let's say this is named as people.db. I create the instance of the person repository here as well. So let's go and create a property, in fact, which represents the repository. So I'll say prop. I want this property to be static and of type person repository. Yeah, so repository namespace would be needed here. I'll say using Xam demo SQLite dot repositories, and I named this as person repo as repository. I want get to be public and set to be private. In the constructor, just before the main page is initialized, and after initialize component, here I say person repo. It's a property, so I should use Pascal case. Equals, I get it initialized here. New person repository, where I pass the DB path. And then there goes the main page instantiation. And that's it here. Okay. Let's then go to main page.xaml to have some design created here. Here I want a grid. I want some attributes to be set. Padding 5, row spacing 1, column spacing 1, and background color as default. So it will take the device default P. Then I want to define row definitions. If you have worked with WPI for Silverlight, precisely XAML language, this is pretty much similar stuff as we are working with XAML only over here. So if you have not worked with XAML in the past, no worries, you can just go and visit the XAML tutorials. Here, inside row definitions, I want few row definitions to be created where each row definition represents one row. So I say row definition height equals to auto, the content it will decide its height. And I'll copy and paste this 4 times. In fact, total of 5 row definitions. The last one I'll say asterisk. Whatever the remaining space is available, that will be the height of the 5th row. And then I define my column definitions. Dot column definitions. I want only one column here. So I just put column definition width equals to whatever is available on the screen. Actually self-close this. That's my layout. Now the actual content. First thing I'm looking for is a data entry text box. So I say entry. In fact, I cannot say text box. It will depend on the type of, I would say, data type of the property which is going to be bound over here. I say entry X colon name. Let's say %. And I'll use placeholder. As we are building for the mobile device, we don't have too much space to have labels and the entry controls, input controls separately created. That's where we usually use the watermarks into the input controls, and that's where placeholder comes in. Here I say enter name. Then I have a button to allow me to save. So I say button text as add person where it goes is grid dot row 1. For entry, we have not given grid row. By default, grid row is 0. If it is confusing, we can actually go and say grid dot row 0. And same way, we can say grid dot column. Here also, there will be grid dot column 0. First column of the next row. Then I have another control that is label, to which I set the identifier using X colon name as status message. Where it goes is grid dot row in grid dot column 0 of row 2. Then there is another button with text set to get all people, which goes in grid.row3 and column 0 of row 3. And then to represent all the departments, I create a control that can be bound to a complex object. So list view is the control. X colon name as people list. Where it goes is grid dot row 4, grid dot column 0. Directly the objects will be displayed. So toString of object is called and displays only the fully qualified name of the class representing that object, where we are looking for the actual values. Hence, we need to set list view.item template property, within which I create the instance of data template, which is like canvas in my hand. Whatever I put here is what the content will be. So here I say I have a view cell. I want every record to be represented as a cell with height as 30 units. And what this cell contains is a stack layout. With padding as 5, within which I have table with text that is bound to name. With the help of binding markup extension, I'll say it is bound to name property. So what happens is this data template is automatically iterated for each record which is there in the collection. So that's my UI. If you want, you can improvise this overall implementation by introducing the MVVM pattern also. We have commands supported over here, and with the help of which you can easily implement this whole thing as MVVM based solution as well. Now, final thing, I go to main page.xaml.cs for backend code, actually for the data binding and all. Here I import the models namespace. So XAM demo SQLite.models. I import system.component model. It's already there. So fine. Only models is required explicitly. Then here I need to create the event handlers for those buttons. One thing that we have missed is we didn't bound the event handler for the buttons. So here I go back to XAML, and for the first button I say clicked is equal. So that is on click of this event, on click event of this button, I want some event handler to be mapped. So I say new event handler. It automatically generates one event handler. In fact, I should say undo. This should have created some backend stuff. I'll delete that as well. And I want this to be properly named. For that, I say X colon name is there for button, and name this as and then I say clicked equals to new event handler. It goes with the proper name, btn add person underscore clicked. Make sense? Same way, For the next button, here I say there is X colon name property set to btn at all people, and here I say clicked equals to new event handler. So here also it generates the proper event handler with the proper name. Now in the backend code, the code behind code, we can see the event handlers are there in place. What next? Add some code here. So first I'll go for this add button click. Set the status message to start with to empty string. Then I say app dot person repo. If you remember, we created a property by this name person repo, which is an instance of person repository as a static property in app. So directly available here with the app class. And this contains a method add new person. And what I want to add is new person dot text. ID is auto generated, so anyways it will be created on its own. Here I say status message dot text is equal to app dot person repo dot status message. We are manipulating it based on the actions in the repository. So it will dynamically add the text to the status message label. Similar things I want here for get all. Status message text. Retrieve the list of people. So list of person I will say. And define the object as people, which is equal to app.person repo dot get all people. There I say people list, which is that list view control dot item source is equals to people. By default, the template will be iterated on each object of person there in this list. So that's our code. Save, build, and once built, we'll say Control F5 to deploy and test this. If Mac machine is connected remotely to this development machine, we will be able to see the iOS version of this application as well. So I'll just test it into Android version, though this is going to look absolutely same in iOS also. Still deploying. Soon it should update. It actually removes the existing version of the application and then deploys the new one and restarts. So that's what has happened. That's why the visible application got unloaded as it was uninstalled. New version getting deployed, and then soon it will start. So it will come back with the UI that we have created. Okay, some reason the UI is coming little distorted. Let me check what mistake we have done. Column 0, column 0, column, yeah. This is the culprit. This should have been 0. No worries. I'll just save and Control F5 again. We can't avoid typos always. Just go and check your XAML. If anything like this happens, Should come up with the updated UI. Now this is good. You can have more better designs created here, colors and all the design options you can explore. So just go through the XAML tutorial for that. I just say I want to add a person with the name Sakit Karnik. I can use this keypad, or because we are working on a physical machine and this is just an emulator, or machine's keyboard is already connected to this. I say add person. I can see the status here. One record's added, name Sakit Karnik. Great. I want to add a few more. Add. Optionally, you can create a reset button as well. And one last. Okay, I want to see the all person details that I've added so far. So I click on get all people and there we get the list. Looks nice. Any questions so far? There is one more variation of this application we will look at shortly. Before that, if you have any questions so far, please feel free to ask in the chat box. Yes, I'm waiting for the questions. You have got 5 minutes. Okay, Manoj has got a question here. Ideally, how much data we should save in SQLite DB or local DB? So practically, there is no limit. The limit is by how much storage space you have on your device. And now you cannot have any idea about what kind of device with what storage capacity the users are actually going to have. You have entry-level devices also with some 8 GB storage, right? You have some higher-end devices as well, maybe with 256 GB storage. So you have to plan the overall storage accordingly. You cannot consume all the storage space of the device only for your application. Maybe you can use some native APIs of the platform to determine what is the storage capacity available, and maybe some 20-25% of the available storage capacity you can use. The older records you can start purging. So that logic needs to be additionally put into your app. Is that clear, Manoj? Yeah. Any other questions? We still have 2 more minutes. Yeah, I'm waiting for the questions. We've got 2 minutes more. Okay, seems to be like there are no questions. So let's proceed. Same implementation, but see here how we are interacting with our database is in a synchronous manner. Now, if data is small, this looks good. But if data is high in amount, the operations, especially the data retrieval operations, may be time consuming. And your UI may become not responding. Sometimes your application may get crashed also because the synchronous operation run on UI thread and UI gets blocked. So operating system usually assumes that your application has hang. Okay. To avoid this, what can be done? Is use the APIs which are all asynchronous. So let's modify our application. I'll not remove anything. I'll just comment the older code so that it will be available for your reference as this code is going to be shared with you guys. So the changes start from here. I'll put a comment though before this. Synchronous connection. And same way, here I'm going to create asynchronous connection. So I say private. Instead of SQLite connection, I will use SQLite async connection class. This code also changes. So here onwards, I'm not going to put comments everywhere. You can just understand that. So I just copy, comment this out. Back, what changes over here is new SQLite async connection. Code is pretty much the same. It is just the asynchronous APIs which come in. Now, create table will not work this way. Create table also is available as a sync operation. I copy and paste this, comment the old one, and here I say create table async based on person. And then constructor cannot be defined as async. Hence, here I need to say dot wait. I cannot use await without async, right? And constructor cannot be defined as async. So that's the reason I put wait. Then add new person. The method itself I'll change. I copy this comment, paste it back. As asynchronous operations I'm going to use. Here I say add new async person or add new person async. That's the standard in .NET. Takes the same parameters almost the same code till here. Instead of insert, I'll have insert async. Now this method return type I'll change and define the whole method as asynchronous method. It's a method, so it can be defined as async. I say async task. It was a void method, so task API doesn't require any type parameter. And to be able to use task, I need to say using threading dot tasks as parallel library. Okay. And then here I have await keyword. Rest everything is same. Similar kind of changes I need here, where I copy this method, comment, paste back, make this method as async, and the return type hence will be task of what we were returning, that is list of person. Name changes to get people async. Okay. Next change is here where we say return await con.table of person dot to list async. Practically the logic is exactly the same. It's just we are using the asynchronous APIs, which will not make the calls to the backend systems. I mean, the systems that are communicating with your database on the local device on the UI thread. Rather, there will be a worker thread created on which the operation will be carried out, and your UI thread will be free, so that your application, if required, can show some progress of the work or can keep the user engaged that, okay, it's still loading. And once the operation returns, we can proceed and change the status text from loading to blank, and the data binding can happen then, right? So with these changes, once again, I build the application. Changes I've made only in the repository. Nowhere else I'm making changes. Yeah, few changes definitely will be required where I'm calling these methods as the names of methods have been changed. So that's precisely in main page XAML. So I copy, comment this, paste it back. Instead of add new person, let's add new person async. I'll make this method, in fact, instead of changes, what I do is copy these two methods, comment these, paste them back, make the method itself as async. Code remains the same, just that now I have to use await keyword, and the name of the method needs to be changed to include async suffix. Same thing for this, where I say this method is also async. Here goes await, and the method name changes to get all people async. Okay, no other change required. If we don't change the names of those methods, just the await keyword and async keyword needs to be put here. No changes required at all apart from that. So once again, I build. This time it should succeed. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Kindly use your chat box. Here the build is succeeded. I'll just say Control F5. Deploy started. Only the application changes needs to be accommodated. So usually it's fast compared to the first time stuff. It's going on. Launch the application. So functionality wise, there will be no major changes for the user, except that there will be no lag or the hanging for your application. Okay. Say get all people first of all. Instead of having button, I can make it auto refresh also by calling that get all people function on load of this application. Right. Here I go ahead and add one more record. Let's say that's the name. I'll say add person and say get all people again. There I get it. Okay. So right now, as we are not working with too big information, we won't be able to figure out the difference that we have made by including asynchronous APIs, but you can understand that. It will be a significant change. Is that fine to all? So let's proceed with the question answer session as the demo is completed here. If you want to know something more about this, if you have any other questions, please put in your chat box. Okay, there is my first question from CB. Are the local DBs always used as permanent storages or temporary ones to pull and store data from main web service and populate the local DBs? So CB, it depends on the type of application. Say, for example, if you are storing the information about the user preferences and all in the database, say, let's talk about a banking application I might be creating, wherein I might have set the layouts and themes and color combinations, the fonts and all that. Maybe then I can go for the permanent storage based solution, right? One example I took during the discussion, if it is about the social networking app, most likely I would be looking for purging of the old data and just keeping the recent information into the database. So let's say last 100, 150 posts I can maintain into the local database. Older than those posts, maybe that record can be deleted. Now it all depends on the actual storage capacity of your device. So as I said earlier, you can have some code written to work with the storage API that determines how much storage is there on your device. Maybe 15, 20, 25% of the storage you can reserve for your own application, and data can be accommodated into that storage. So if your data grows beyond that limit, maybe then you can think of purging the older information and keeping only the recent information into it. Does that answer your question, CB? More of an architecture question. You have to plan it. based on your audience, based on the types of devices people would be using. Usually for business applications, we have to think about the lower end devices, low configuration devices. So any more questions, guys?